Welcome to tonight's sleep story, The Lanternwood Grove. Before we begin the journey, I invite you to take a moment to settle yourself comfortably. If you're enjoying this soothing narrative, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more calming content. If you'd prefer to skip this opening welcome and breathing guidance, you can find timestamps for each chapter in the video description. For those staying, this short breathing practice will help you ease into the story's tranquil pace, allowing the Lanternwood Grove to guide you gently toward rest. Let's start by creating a cozy space just for you. Allow your body to settle into your bed, feeling fully supported by the mattress beneath you. Adjust your pillows or blankets so you're as comfortable as possible, wrapped in warmth and stillness. This is your time, free of demands or distractions, where the soft light of the grove's lanterns and the gentle hum of its forest will carry you toward deep, peaceful sleep. Now, let's breathe together. Inhale slowly and deeply through your nose, imagining the soft glow of a lantern flickering to life with your breath. Hold that gentle light within you for a moment, then exhale slowly through your mouth, like releasing a sigh that melts away the weight of the day. With each inhale, draw in calm, and with each exhale, let go of any lingering thoughts, any tension that might still remain. Imagine the air moving in and out like waves, steady, soothing, and natural. If your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly okay. Just bring your attention back to the rhythm of your breath or the sound of my voice. The story of the Lanternwood Grove awaits you, a tale of lantern-lit paths, whispering trees, and the quiet heart of an enchanted forest, where peace flows like twilight itself. There's nothing you need to do now except listen, breathe, and allow yourself to drift deeper into stillness. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Path of Lanterns. The twilight was soft and endless, as though the world itself were wrapped in the muted folds of dusk's gentle embrace. Somewhere beyond time, in a place where footsteps left no mark and the air hummed with forgotten secrets, Kossia stepped quietly into the Lanternwood Grove. She wasn't sure when she had begun walking, nor where the path had first appeared, but it welcomed her like an old friend. Its winding trail lined with lanterns that glowed like warm fireflies suspended in air. Each lantern flickered softly, its light swaying to some unseen rhythm, and as Kossia walked, she found her breath beginning to follow it. In, out, in, out. A rhythm as natural as the quiet beat of her heart. The ground beneath her feet was a patchwork of cool moss and fallen petals, soft as velvet to the touch. Above, ancient trees stretched their gnarled arms toward the sky, their silhouettes blending with the dusky light so seamlessly it was impossible to tell where the leaves ended and the clouds began. Everything seemed to move at the same slow, peaceful pace, an unhurried harmony that the world outside, wherever that may be, had surely forgotten. "Welcome, wanderer," came a voice as soft as leaves brushing against each other in the breeze. Kossia paused mid-step and turned toward the sound. Just beyond a particularly large lantern, its light a golden pulse like a heartbeat, stood a figure who looked as though he belonged here as much as the lanterns and the trees. He was dressed simply, his coat woven from fabric that shimmered faintly in the half-light, like ripples across still water. Atop his head sat a crown of willow leaves, so light it seemed the wind might carry it away. "I'm Fennel," the figure said, inclining his head with a gentle smile. "Guardian of the Lanternwood Grove, tender of lanterns, and watcher of wandering souls." Kossia blinked slowly, her thoughts slipping into the quiet hum of the grove itself. I don't know how I got here." Her voice sounded different, as though softened by the very air around them. "Few do," Fennel replied kindly, stepping closer. His movements were unhurried, careful not to disturb the stillness. "But you are here, and that is what matters. The grove only appears to those who need it." He gestured toward the path ahead where lanterns stretched into the distance like a glowing river. "Shall we walk?" And so they did, Fennel leading the way along the winding trail, while Kossia followed in quiet wonder. With every step, the lanterns flickered just a little brighter, as though pleased to see them passing. Kossia felt her shoulders loosen, the lingering weight she hadn't noticed she carried dissolving bit by bit. It was hard to hold on to anything heavy in a place like this, where every sound, every sight seemed crafted to encourage letting go. "Each lantern," Fennel said, breaking the silence in his low, soothing voice, "holds a dream, a memory, or a gentle thought. They've been left here by those who passed through long ago, wanderers like yourself." He paused as they reached one lantern whose glow seemed unusually soft, its light spiraling lazily outward like the petals of a flower. "This one is a dream of spring rain," he said. "Can you hear it?" Kossia tilted her head slightly, her breath catching in her throat, somewhere in the distance, or was it right beside her? She heard it, the faint rhythmic patter of raindrops on leaves, the kind of rain that soothed rather than drenched. It was as though the lantern itself were whispering its secret into her ear, sharing a memory so pure that she could feel its cool mist on her skin. "Rain has a way of washing things clean," Fennel murmured, his gaze soft on the lantern. "Memories, burdens, thoughts that are too loud. The grove remembers them, but it does not cling to them." They walked on, their footsteps muffled by the moss, the quiet broken only by the whisper of leaves and the occasional faint hum of a lantern waking as they passed. Kossia found herself sinking deeper into the stillness. The more they walked, the less her mind tried to grasp at questions. How she had come here, where she was meant to go. None of it seemed important. The only thing that mattered was this moment, the lantern's glow, Fennel's calm presence, and the soft murmur of the grove, like a lullaby sung by something ancient and kind. At last, they came to a bend in the path where the trees seemed to lean closer together, their branches arching overhead to form a canopy that shimmered faintly with a soft golden light. Fennel paused, turning to Kossia with a quiet smile. "The path will take you deeper, if you're ready. But you needn't hurry. There's no such thing as rushing in the Lanternwood Grove." Kossia looked up at the archway, her heart strangely light. The lanterns beyond it glowed even softer, their light like a distant dream just waiting to be uncovered. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, the air cool and sweet in her lungs. "I'm ready," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure for what. Fennel nodded and gestured for her to continue, his voice like a sigh of the wind through the branches. "Then let us walk a little farther." And so they did. The path curved gently onward, the lanterns flickering to life in ripples of warm golden light, as though they too were walking beside her. The grove embraced her steps with its quiet magic, its rhythm weaving through her thoughts like soft thread, pulling her ever deeper into its comforting stillness. Kossia walked on, she realized, and the grove walked with her. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Ancient Trees. The path underfoot grew softer as Kossia and Fennel walked, the moss deepening into a plush carpet that silenced every step. The lanterns swayed faintly in an unseen breeze, their light stretching into dappled patterns that danced along the trunks of towering trees. The air had thickened slightly, not with weight, but with presence. Something unspoken lingered here, as though the forest itself were holding its breath. Fennel paused before one of the colossal trees, whose bark was a web of silvery lines, like veins of light glowing faintly in the eternal dusk. "We are at the edge of the Whispering Grove," he murmured. His voice was lower now, as if not to disturb the ancient quiet. "The trees here remember everything, though they tell only the gentlest stories." Kossia tilted her head, listening. At first, she heard nothing but the usual murmurs of the forest. A faint rustle of leaves, a breeze sliding through branches like fingertips through silk. But as the silence settled deeper around her, it began, soft and lilting, a chorus of voices blending together into a melody that could barely be called sound. It was more a feeling like the warmth of sunlight on closed eyelids or the weight of a blanket pulled snug. "What are they saying?" Kossia whispered, feeling as though the words might scatter the sound like startled birds. "They speak of stillness," Fennel replied. He reached out a hand to the tree beside him, his palm resting gently on its ancient skin. "They sing to those who listen. To the hurried, they offer slowness. To the restless, they offer peace." Drawn closer by something she couldn't name, Kossia mirrored him, her hand pressed against the bark, cool and smooth beneath her fingertips. The sound shifted then, the hum deepening until it resonated somewhere in her chest, a rhythm, slow and steady, as though the tree itself were breathing. With each pulse of sound, her shoulders loosened, and the lingering edges of thought fell away, one by one, like leaves in a soft wind. Her breathing fell into step with the trees, in, out, and for a moment she felt as though the whispers carried her name, as though the grove itself knew her and welcomed her home. Fennel let his hand fall and nodded forward with a gentle smile. "They will remember your touch now. The Whispering Grove keeps no one's name, but it always remembers kindness." As they walked on, Kossia glanced back once, the silvery glow of the trees fading softly behind her. The hum of their voices lingered in her chest like a lullaby half-remembered, a quiet promise that even as she left, the trees would remain, rooted and still, whispering stories to the dusk. Chapter 3. The Meadow of Stillness. The path widened as Kossia and Fennel stepped out of the trees and into a meadow bathed in soft golden twilight. The sky above stretched like an endless tapestry of muted lavender and gold, and the light seemed to settle on everything it touched. petals, grass, and air like a shimmering veil. There was no wind here, only a faint rhythmic stillness, as though the meadow itself were holding time in its hands. Kossia paused to take it all in. The meadow was vast, dotted with clusters of flowers whose colors were so gentle they seemed brushed onto the earth by a careful hand. Pale blues, soft yellows, and creams tinged with pink. Each petal glowed faintly, as though the lanterns themselves had whispered their light into them. "It's like the meadow is sleeping," Kossia said quietly, afraid to break the quiet. Fennel, who had walked a few steps ahead, turned back to her, his eyes kind. This is the Meadow of Stillness, where even the wind rests. It is a place for weary thoughts to lay themselves down. He gestured to the clusters of flowers. If you listen closely, you'll hear them breathe. Curious, Kossia knelt and leaned toward a patch of ivory blooms, their petals unfurling like tiny stars. She closed her eyes and listened, breathing in their subtle scent, like rain-soaked earth mingled with the sweetness of clover. At first there was only silence, but then so faint it could have been imagined she heard it, a soft, steady sound, a little like the rise and fall of waves on a distant shore. Each bloom seemed to breathe as one, in and out, their rhythm coaxing her own breaths into gentle harmony. "Do they sleep too?" Kossia asked, her voice no louder than a murmur. "They do," Fennel replied, kneeling beside her, "but their rest is not like ours. They carry no weight to set down, no worries to hush. They simply are, and that is enough." He ran his fingers through the grass beside the flowers, the blades bowing under his touch and springing back with a soft sigh. This place teaches us that stillness is not emptiness, but presence. Kossia lay back on the grass, feeling its softness cradle her like a blanket warmed by the sun. She let her eyes close, the golden twilight filling the spaces behind her eyelids. Around her the meadow whispered, soft sounds of flowers breathing, grass shifting, and the far-off hum of the grove. Her thoughts, once tangled like brambles, now floated loose and light. A deep exhale escaped her lips as she let herself sink into the meadow's stillness. Here, time stretched like a drowsy yawn, and the air itself seemed to say, "Rest now, you are safe." Fennel's voice, quiet and rhythmic, broke the silence only just enough. "The meadow will hold you, Kossia. Let it teach you how to simply be." And as she lay there, her breaths aligning with the pulse of the meadow, Kossia understood. Stillness, she realized, wasn't something to find. It was something to feel. Chapter 4. The Bridge of Reflection. When Kossia opened her eyes, the golden glow of the meadow lingered on her skin, as though the light itself had wrapped her in its gentle warmth. Fennel was waiting a few steps ahead, his patient smile unchanged. She rose slowly, the grass beneath her rustling like a whisper of farewell, and followed him toward the edge of the meadow. There, tucked between low rolling hills, a small wooden bridge appeared, arching delicately over a pond so still it looked like polished glass. "This is the Bridge of Reflection," Fennel said softly as they approached. The wood of the bridge was pale and smooth, each plank worn by time but sturdy, as though many feet had crossed it, yet none had ever disturbed its quiet. "The water here holds more than your image. It reflects what you bring to it, your calm, your breath, your stillness." Kossia stepped forward, drawn to the water's edge. The pond was a perfect mirror, the lanterns from the grove and the lingering twilight sky shimmering across its surface. When she leaned over it, her reflection stared back at her, not quite as she was, but softer, her expression free of lines she hadn't noticed before. The Kossia in the water looked peaceful, whole, as though every part of her had been smoothed into harmony. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her voice hushed by awe. She dipped her fingers into the water, half expecting ripples to spread and break the image, but the surface barely stirred. Instead, a soft coolness met her touch, like silk slipping between her fingertips. "The pond knows how to hold stillness," Fennel said, his voice steady and low, blending with the faint hum of the grove around them. "It will show you what you are when you let go of everything else. No past, no future, only this moment, this breath." Kossia exhaled, a deep and deliberate breath, and the pond seemed to echo her sigh. The lantern light reflected on its surface flickered softly, as though breathing with her. She watched the ripples this time, their gentle waves stretching out toward the far shore, where trees bowed low, as if in quiet reverence. The rhythm of it, the stillness, the soft ripples, the rise and fall of her breath began to wrap around her like a cocoon, and all the spaces within her that had felt restless began to settle. "Crossing the bridge is like crossing a threshold," Fennel said as he stepped onto it, his movements slow and deliberate. The wood creaked faintly underfoot, but the sound was soft, comforting. "Leave what feels heavy behind. Let the water hold it for you, like the trees hold their whispers, and the meadow holds its stillness." He turned to her, lantern light glinting faintly in his kind eyes. "There is no hurry, Kossia. Take your time." Kossia nodded, her steps careful as she followed him onto the bridge. With each step, the sounds of the grove, the faint hum of lanterns, the soft calls of distant crickets seemed to deepen, as though urging her forward, yet keeping her grounded in the moment. The bridge curved gently upward, and when she reached its center, she paused to look out over the pond. The reflection was perfect again, hers, the bridge, the trees, and the soft glow of lanterns. But now, instead of just seeing it, she felt it. The stillness, the symmetry, the quiet magic of the grove surrounded her, and as her breath matched its rhythm, she realized she had left nothing behind. It had simply melted away. Chapter 5. The Heart of the Grove. The bridge led Kossia to a path softer than any she had walked before, blanketed in golden moss that seemed to hold the light of the lanterns themselves. The air grew warmer here, filled with a quiet hum she recognized, not a sound, but a feeling, like a heartbeat gently resonating through the earth. Fennel walked beside her without speaking, his presence steady and unhurried. The forest around them seemed to lean in closer, its trees standing taller and their branches stretching skyward, as though guiding her forward. Ahead, the path opened into a glade, and at its center stood the lantern tree. It was the oldest and largest tree Kossia had ever seen, its roots gnarled and spreading like rivers carved into the earth, its bark shimmering faintly with silvery light. From its branches hung hundreds, perhaps thousands of lanterns, their glow weaving through the leaves like golden stars caught in an eternal twilight. Some lanterns swayed as though stirred by a gentle breeze, though the air remained still. Others pulsed softly, as if breathing with the rhythm of the grove. Kossia stopped at the edge of the glade, her breath catching in her chest. The beauty of the lantern tree was quiet yet overwhelming, like seeing something you didn't realize you had been longing for. "This is the heart of the grove," Fennel said, his voice low and reverent. "Every lantern here holds a dream, a wish, or a moment of stillness. They were left behind like gifts, each one glowing so that others might find their way." Kossia stepped closer, feeling the ground beneath her hum faintly with the tree's life. She reached out, her fingertips grazing the smooth wood of one of the lanterns hanging within reach. Its glow brightened at her touch, warm against her skin. "Does this one belong to someone?" she asked, her voice softer than a whisper. "They all do," Fennel replied, "and yet they belong to no one. The grove keeps them safe, just as it keeps you. They are here to light the path for whoever wanders this way, just as the grove's lanterns have lit yours." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. "Perhaps you would like to leave one of your own?" Kossia blinked, startled by the thought. "How?" "By breathing into it." Fennel gestured gently to the lantern before her. "Close your eyes. Hold a memory, a thought, or a dream. Something soft, something light, and let it go into the lantern. It will hold it for you." Kossia nodded slowly and took the lantern carefully in both hands. It was weightless, though she could feel the warmth of it curling against her palms. She closed her eyes, the quiet of the grove settling deeper around her. A single breath, soft, steady, carried her thoughts into the lantern. The memory of the meadow's stillness, the whispers of the ancient trees, the rhythm of the pond's reflection, and the golden peace of this moment. She exhaled slowly, and the lantern glowed brighter, its light steady and calm. When she opened her eyes, Fennel smiled. "The grove thanks you, Kossia. Your light will guide others long after you leave." Kossia set the lantern back among the branches, watching as it swayed gently, its light joining the countless others in the lantern tree's embrace. The hum of the grove seemed to deepen as though acknowledging her offering, and a warmth spread through her chest, something beyond gratitude, something like belonging. "It's time to rest now," Fennel said quietly. His voice blended with the hum of the grove, a sound so soft it felt like a dream itself. "The grove will hold you." Kossia stepped back and lowered herself onto the moss at the base of the tree, its roots cradling her like a nest. She closed her eyes, the lantern light upon her, painting golden patterns on the darkness behind her eyelids. Her breath slowed, in time with the grove's pulse, until there was no difference between them. The last thing she heard before drifting into a deep, peaceful sleep was Fennel's voice, as gentle as a sigh. "Rest now. You are safe. The lanterns will always glow for you." And in the quiet heart of the Lanternwood Grove, Kossia slept, her dreams held softly in the light of the lanterns, her presence now part of the grove's timeless calm.